Hi, I'm Stacy Teicher-Cateru, an education reporter with the Christian Science Monitor. I'm in Chicago today with Arne Duncan, who served as U.S. Secretary of Education from 2009 to 2015. He recently returned to Chicago, where he previously served for 7 years as CEO of public schools. Now, as a managing partner of the Emerson Collective, Mr. Duncan is focused on connecting young people in Chicago with better opportunities and reducing the amount of violence and unemployment they face. Thanks so much for speaking with us today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Are there hidden effects of poverty on learning that you think need to come to the surface more?
I don't know if they're hidden effects. I think they're very evident effects. So when, I think I always say the best investment we can make is in early childhood education. And this isn't a hidden effect. It's been documented that the average child coming from a poor community starts kindergarten at 5 years old, a year to 16 months behind. That's the norm. That's not the exception. That's the average. The fact that we allow that and don't start at 3 and 4 year olds, and frankly don't start at birth, I mean, this really should be a 0 to 5 continuum, that's not a hidden effect. That's a very real effect that's happening every single day. And again, we allow that to happen. I think one that I'm increasingly concerned, or two, I'll say that I'm increasingly concerned about that folks may not think about in these neighborhoods that I'm so focused on now, where there's just such a prevalence of violence. You have a couple things happening. You have a lot of kids who just simply can't go outside anymore. And the number of young people since I've been home who tell me, we can't play outside. We just go to school and we go home and we can't go out. That, for me, that's devastating. I spent all my life running around on the south and west sides playing basketball on courts all over. And neighborhoods were dangerous, but we could navigate that. There wasn't the randomness of violence. It wasn't so pervasive. And when you think about kids just literally being locked up, being imprisoned in their homes all day, every day, that's a staggering concept. And a lot of what I'm thinking about is, how do we give children their childhoods? How do we let them be kids? How do we let them play? And we're robbing them of that. And I think that the psychological consequences of that, I think, are pretty profound. The other one that I'm thinking about a ton is a number, particularly of young men, who just literally don't think they're going to live, who think they're going to die at 18 or 21 or 22. And everything that I try and talk about and preach is, long term, and think about college and deferred gratification and work for, build a future. But if you really, really in your heart don't think you have a future, that changes everything about your calculations and decisions you make every single day. You're just trying to survive. You're just trying to make it, and you're living for the day and for the moment because you don't think you're going to have tomorrow.
What kinds of things are you finding solutions cropping up to that, or what are your efforts focused on in terms of how to try to confront those problems?
Yeah, so intellectually this isn't hard. It is harder to execute against it. One is just how do you reduce the level of gun violence? And so, intervening very directly with jobs, with mentors, with economic opportunity, with better educational opportunity, that starts to help young people understand that they have a future. And for me, this is a lot less about talking to kids and saying, we believe in you, and that's important to do. They listen to what we say, but they watch what we do. And if we talk is a little bit cheap, frankly. If we verbalize all those things, but don't have great teachers and great educational opportunities, if we don't have meaningful summer jobs and year-round jobs, then I think our words are pretty empty. So we're very, very focused on creating concrete educational and economic opportunity jobs for kids in neighborhoods that far too often are forgotten or on the margins.
Are you seeing a growth in efforts, more formal efforts, to connect young people through education to an individual mentor who will really stay with them to help support their educational path?
I honestly, I don't overstate this or say this lightly, I don't think young people can make it without a positive adult. Somebody, in a perfect world, it's a parent, but not every child is so fortunate, but a coach, a teacher, a mentor, a tutor, somebody from a faith-based organization, someone from a nonprofit, someone who can be there, to your point, for the long haul, not overnight, but over time. And this is not linear. There are good days, there are bad days. There are 2 steps forward some days and 3 steps back.
Yeah.
But I've just seen all my life how critically important these relationships are in helping young people develop a sense of self-esteem, start to understand the world around them, get through those tough times, those crisis points, which all of us go through, and then make it to the other side and become very, very successful, productive members of society.
How do you think adults can listen better to young people in these situations?
Well, I just think, again, for me, for all these challenges that are tough, I'm actually eternally optimistic. I'm very hopeful. And I'm frankly less hopeful on what we as adults are going to do, because I think we've messed some things up in some pretty significant ways. These young people are so smart and so committed and know what they want and need. And if we can do, again, a lot less talking and a lot more listening, to be very clear, not just listening, but acting upon what young people are telling us, I think they're going to lead us to where we need to go. And these are just anecdotes, but we've funded through Emerson about 4,700 summer jobs for young people in the southwest sides of the city this year, just because there's so much need, so much young people wanting to work, wanting to do something positive, didn't have the opportunity. Met with different groups of young people. One small lunchtime group with about 10 kids. There was one young man who just stood out, just an absolute leader, so clear, and you could see he was going places. And we talked for about an hour. And then at the very, very end of the conversation, like a couple minutes to go, he then says that he's the youngest of 8, and he's got 3 older brothers, and every single one of them is locked up. Armed robbery, drugs, something else. And he doesn't have much support at home, and he's trying to make it. He's trying to do something different. And given the first 55 minutes of that conversation, honestly, I had no idea. I never have known. So here's a young man who, with all the odds stacked against him, all this family history of social failure, and somehow he has the strength and the resilience to try and do something different. And not try, he is. Like, he's going to make it. Despite all the odds, I think he's going to be the one to break through. But I think there's so many young people like that who are facing stuff that you and I might find unimaginable growing up, and somehow they find the strength to want to do something different. We have to be there. He talked about how much this opportunity to work this summer meant to him and keeping him off the streets and doing something positive. That's got to be the norm. That's got to be there. And if not, young people with his commitment and with his character who want to do the right thing, if those opportunities aren't there because of that lack, because of the void there, they may end up going the other way.
Are there forces that you see at work sometimes that limit how much mentoring can accomplish?
I tend to be very optimistic, and I think the limits are not sort of outside forces. It's our willingness to commit, our willingness to spend time. This is time intensive. This is not one you can phone in or just, well, I'm there theoretically. This has to be. This is the ultimate of ultimate in human interactions and relationships. If folks in the mainstream of society aren't there, well, then the gang leaders are. So it's not like there won't be a mentor. Trust me, there will be a mentor. It's just not one that we necessarily want. And far too often, they are willing to commit more. They outwork us. They are more strategic than us. They know what kids are falling through the cracks. They are present. And unless we're willing to match that presence, we're going to lose kids that we should not lose. And that's not the kids' fault. That's us as adults. That's us in the mainstream of society, through our actions saying, we don't quite believe in these kids enough, or we're not quite willing to make the effort that others are. And when that's the case, and it often is, shame on us.
What potential do you see for more progress along the lines of equity in education under the new federal education law that we're transitioning to now?
There are lots of Americans, again, across every geography or racial and ethnic group, who are feeling left out, who are left behind, who are scared, and the economy's changing, and we in education haven't changed fast enough. And I worry a lot about the divide between the haves and the have-nots. I worry a lot about the lack of social mobility and income inequality. And clearly I'm biased on this topic, but I just think the answer to so much of our social ills is better education for all. When I grew up here on the south side of Chicago, if my friends dropped out of high school, it wasn't fantastic, but honestly, it wasn't the end of the world. They could go work in the stockyards here or the steel mills here, and many did, and support a home and have a family and be okay. Those jobs are gone. They are never coming back, and the cost of dropping out of high school today, There are no good jobs in the legal economy, none. If you just have a high school diploma, there are virtually none. It's some, I always say, some form of education beyond high school, 4-year university, 2-year community college, trade, technical, vocational training. Some form of education has to be the norm for every single young person in America. And it's not today. And it's not. And the final point is, obviously, all of us, we have to be lifelong learners now. Like, we can't, at 21, at 22, if you think you're done learning, you're going to be obsolete. The world's changing every single day. And so this is a really, I think it's a time of real challenge, and I am worried, to be clear, but it's a time of real opportunity that we're fighting for families. We're fighting for strong communities. We're fighting to keep our democracy strong and more cohesive. I worry, the sense of divisiveness now is very, very troubling, and I don't know who benefits from that. I don't think it makes our country stronger. And take out politics, take out ideology. How do we bring folks together more? We better educate everybody. Everybody. We give everybody, no guarantees, but give everyone a chance to be successful. That's, I think, the least we can do for young people, for families, and ultimately for our nation.